So, yes, welcome. Thank you for joining. Silent mind is the topic I really want to focus on today. It's such an important part of spiritual practice, and it's a subject that it seems like a lot of spiritual teachers avoid. It's a bit intense, I guess, the focus of silent mind. Uh, Someone asked Ramana Maharshi, how do you measure like the quality of a spiritual practice? And Maharshi said, by how quiet the mind is determines your level of spiritual practice. And Eckhart responded to that saying, and the mind doesn't like hearing this. But it is really such a fundamental piece of enlightenment, of awakening. It's it's not just quieting the mind, it's knowing who you are and who you're not, and disidentifying from the mind, taking our sense of self away from that voice in the head that's constantly talking, talking, talking. It's a really important part of, of deepening the spiritual practice. Because you think about um, how much of spiritual concepts and religion or different ideas of what spirit is so based in thought. It's based in intellect. It's based in concept. And while that's beautiful to a degree, it's also in the end becomes limiting. And this is one of the main reasons why a lot of people, while they have the right intention of being spiritual, being religious, create all kinds of different types of egos that actually dilute their actual spiritual, you know, practice of patience or forgiveness or surrender, non-judgment. Uh, but what's amazing is when you really focus on disidentifying from the mind and getting deeper into who you know beyond the level of thought, all of those beautiful qualities that we attribute to spirituality just naturally happen. That's that's one of the really cool gifts about it. It's like I found growing up Christian, the idea was like you got to slowly perfect yourself, and get closer to Jesus. And yet it always felt so out of reach, that actual ability to live as he did. And then once I got into Eckhart and the mind finally subsided, I actually experienced what unconditional love was. It wasn't a thought anymore. I felt it. And as I do feel it right now, I felt it. And that's when I realized the spirituality game, religions, the billions of people that follow it and try to do their best to be of God or like God or whatever name they give to God. Um, that's the fundamental piece they're missing. It's that they're still operating so heavily in the mind. And when you operate in mind, judgment is just, it's going to happen. And when you operate in mind, it just gets so confusing. Because, it's like you're trying to figure out right from wrong, left from right, good and bad. And yet then there's also this like secret closet of desires that so many people in religions have, where maybe they conceptually think it might be right or wrong, and yet they still live it. In which case, it's like actions speak louder than words. You can say whatever you like about what you believe in, but your actions say way more about what you actually believe in instead of some nice, pretty thought that you like to identify with, yet don't actually walk. And that's also a really important part of enlightenment, is really taking the responsibility to walk our talk, not just to have the right words, but to really just be them. Um, and all of this became much more tangible for me when I really started to understand how to quiet the mind, which also means realizing that I wasn't the mind that needed to be quieted, that needed to be silenced. Um, and I remember when I was first getting into this, any pointers like that, any pointers like you are not the mind or quiet the voice in your head. I had two different experiences. One would be like, "Ooh, that sounds wonderful. I would love freedom from my mind." And then the other side of that though was resistance. I would feel some pain or some fear deep inside me with the idea of letting go of everything I thought I was. It's kind of a scary place to be. It's a big jump or leap of faith to let go of the mind in a real, tangible way. Because, um, for humanity, not just in your life, but in that for hundreds or thousands of years, uh, humans have really grown attached and accustomed to using our intellect and our mind because it's the thing that gave us superiority over the animals as far as like, our intellect, being able to create tools. We became stronger and faster and smarter. Um, on one level. Of course, where we also made a big mistake was there is no superiority in life, in the depths of life. We making ourselves superior is where so much of our ego came in, and we started to suffer for that. But but the mind is a powerful tool, and because of its power, humans have really grown comfortable with it and feel there's a sense of safety in the voice in your head. There's a sense of safety because also we find comfort in repetition. If you look at advertisements, even it's just so obvious. Humans are so we have we really cling to things that are familiar, and things that are familiar become comfortable because there's a sense of trust. And so imagine the thing that you have experienced most repetitiveness with, most sense of comfort and trust with. Um, is the very thing that's always been with you since you were little. And that's that the voice in the head, the mind, talking and talking and talking. And it's gotten you in some trouble maybe, but it's also gotten you in a lot of good places. And because of this, uh, we we really grow a sense of safety to it, um, and a deep level of trust with our minds. Even though, and the irony of it is that we trust it, and yet some part of us also knows that it's our mind that is the very source of so much of our suffering, right? When the mind just starts going, replaying stories over and over again, something that happened years ago, it's recreating the story. It's recreating even the physiological responses to that past memory. And yet we're like torturing ourselves by playing it over and over and over again without even finding any real solution or practicality. It's just the mechanism happening, and we don't realize we have a conscious ability to say, wait, hold on, i don't I don't want this story anymore to repeat. I'm going to drop it. We don't realize we have that ability. And partly because I believe, in some ways different teachers and masters have pointed to the mastery of ourselves and of mind. Yet, in the reality of things, we aren't taught that we can quiet our minds on command in school. I wasn't taught that when I used to go to church, yeah, when I was younger. I wasn't taught that from my parents or from social media or from, well, social media didn't exist when I was a kid. But, you get the point. It's like a government advertisement. Nobody's saying, hey, just quiet your mind, just turn it off. No one's even recognizing that as possible, even today. Most people have this fundamental belief that it is not possible to quiet your mind on command. Uh, And this is not true. It is an illusion. It is not only possible to quiet your mind on demand, it's a very important piece of the puzzle to deepening your awakening. Um, and one thing that's interesting to note there is the idea that it's impossible, right? That feeling or that belief that it's impossible to quiet the mind. Uh, it's a belief. It's a byproduct of the mind, and that's part of the irony of it is that like we're really looking at how do you escape a prison that you don't know you're in? It's impossible to escape a prison you don't know you're in. So the first step you take is realizing, oh, I have an addiction to the voice in my head. I have an addiction to my mind, the mind, not even mind, but the mind. I have an addiction to going to my memories and into the imagination of future and into all kinds of daydreams and fears and what if scenarios, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, anything that's not this moment though. Yeah, it's always focusing on something outside of what's happening right now. So it's funny though, is here I am talking about silent mind, using words, right? Right now, I'm technically using mind. I'm using words to speak to you. And then you're taking the words and then sort of absorbing them, contemplating them, chewing on them. And where? In the mind. The mind's going, yeah, I have an addiction to the mind, yep. But this addictive mind is the one saying, I have an addiction. Yet it's also really important. But just step back and notice all of that, right? I'm using mind right now. You're using mind. It's even on Facebook, whenever you post, the question that's asked that billions of people use every day, little question that says, what is on your mind? So everybody's constantly sharing what is on their mind, what is on their mind, what is on your mind, what is on your mind. And it's interesting too, even some of the most brilliant people, most successful people in the world still don't understand the depths of how strong this addiction to mind is, this addiction to thinking is. And there are many roots, there are many reasons as to why we're so addicted. Part of which is often control. It gives us this sense of control, a sense of power. Um, and while, yeah, it does give us a tiny bit of control, it gives nothing compared to the power of everything else involved. And that's why so much of our spiritual practice is surrender, because there's so much we cannot control. But a really important part of meditation, the purpose of meditation, sitting in silence, sitting with the mind, and really finding the comfort of silence. Not even just being comfortable in silence, but like really enjoying it. Because it is you. If you are not the mind that you are addicted to, then who are you? The only thing left is the silence. If there is a strong identification with mind right now, then there will be resistance that comes in with hearing the words or the idea that you are not the mind, that you are silence. There will be a little bit of resistance that says, oh no. In fact, I think a lot of people, if they heard this, they would immediately go somewhere else. They would just be like, for whatever reason, some part of them just goes, no, this isn't, I'm not feeling this. And then they go watch another random video on YouTube, or you know, distraction, escapism, or something. We might even manifest the distraction. Something suddenly people start coming and distracting us, and there's some deep part of us that is afraid of this idea. It's afraid of the truth. So look at that. Notice that. Don't judge that either, if it's there. Another really important piece, um, to understanding the mind, or to knowing it in a way that you can start to disidentify from it, to start to really recognize when you have any sort of thought, it is not you, it is just a thought, and that it doesn't have to be taken so seriously. For whatever reason, we take all of our thoughts so seriously. And it's a really powerful practice to catch yourself, to catch the seriousness that we invest somehow in every thought that crosses our mind, every story, every, memory, visualization, what if scenario, daydream. The reason we can't just turn it off on command is because we give it a seriousness. We give it an importance. Oh, this is important. I need to finish this thought. Oh, this is important. I need to think about this for a while. That importance, when you take that seriousness, and you take it away from the mind, and you put it into the silence, and into peace, and into how you're feeling, that's when a big shift occurs. Because taking what you really think deep down is important, what you really believe is important or know to be important, and you're putting it in truth. The truth being that the mind is not all that serious or all that important. But fear can come in, discomfort can come in, because due to the familiarity of it, due to the repetition of it, we have a strong feeling of safety connected to our minds. That's why I believe so many people tend to run away from ideas or practices of meditation or self-inquiry. It's too intense. And yet, it's like the final answer. It's the final door to a regular experience of enlightenment. So I suppose it's like the light, maybe just too bright, but it's important. On a random side note, I think it's kind of funny. Uh, I've made YouTube videos sharing spirituality and enlightenment for about 5 years now. And in 5 years, I have like 50 something 50 something subscribers out of 54 or something. And a friend on Facebook recently made her a new YouTube channel, and within 2 days, she has more subscribers than I do. And her channel is about makeup, about putting various shades of color on the face. I can't lie, and I say, like, a little part of me is just like, what? Uh, uh, what I'm sharing is so immensely valuable in increasing quality of life, in understanding who we are on the deepest of levels, finding the mastery of the mind, finding healing. Um, but it just maybe it's like it's too intense for a large audience as of yet, or with timing of things. Um, I don't know. I find it kind of funny, but really also interesting as to sort of like a small hint at where the collective is right now. And nobody's wrong. That's part of it too. There's no judgment in it. Keep the mind away from judging the situation, but just noticing it. You could also say the same thing like with Eckhart, for example. Eckhart giving the secrets of life, right? And he has, I don't know, 500,000 followers on Twitter. And then there are musicians that definitely do not even come close to understanding the secrets of life, but they make a catchy song and they have 20, 30 million followers. And again, it keep the judgmental mind away, but it's really interesting to notice that how where the collective is right now on what we find to be valuable, what we think is worth following. So and then unfortunately too, a lot of the times when people that don't have a strong foundation are given so much attention and power on a platform, they crumble, they fall apart, especially when they're young. They can't handle the pressure and they don't have the answers. People are like idolizing them as if they do. And turns into a big mess. Not to mention the fact that if you follow the wrong people, you you're absorbing. Like if you look up to somebody that you idolize, uh, but they don't really have a lot of answers. I mean, it can be beautiful in some ways, but then you can also accidentally condition yourself to having the same unhealthy patterns that they have just because they're popular. Um, so it's a really interesting thing too that I observe with humans as a whole. It's like this idea that like once you're popular, you're important. This quantity over quality. Uh, if you have 100,000 subscribers, you must really know what you're talking about. And when you have 20, you must not understand at all. Uh, and yet there's this beautiful karma of it because anyone who's really uh, a sincere seeker doesn't care how many followers somebody has, whether they have a billion or they have two. What they care about is what the individual is really sharing and saying, because it's the information, it's the quality of the presence that is the most important, not some number. Um, Yet the psychology of the collective is in a totally different place. And I think that also explains why a lot of our world is so confusing or so lost, right? We'd rather watch makeup tutorials than how to understand our minds, how to understand and find healing. We'd rather distract ourselves with escapism versus really be strong and confident and sit with those deep pains that we know are deep inside of us, but that are not comfortable. And this is where the work is, and this is also where the reward is. But deep rewards don't come without a good bit of work. And it's all part of the process too, but something really interesting to note. Be careful not to let the mind judge anyone. No one is wrong. The collective is not wrong. It just is. It just is. And now returning to quiet mind, I fell in love with the practice of quieting the mind because early on I had a very philosophical mind when I was younger. Still do, but before it used to kind of get me into dark places because I couldn't find the answers and I wasn't comfortable not knowing. Uh, I would get into these heavy places where like almost like a cloud of depression, and my family and friends would even notice because it would hit me for a few days, and I didn't even really know what it was. Back then, I had no idea what it was, but I just knew that it was uncomfortable, and I didn't understand it at all. And what I came to realize is that it was a byproduct of me not being able to shut off my mind. And so once I had this ability, I could go into really deep, far out concepts, really expansive possibilities. And yet at the same time, when I start to feel any bit of overwhelm, any bit of suffering, oh, okay, hold on. Let me put this down for a while. Go back, reset here in this moment, and just drop whatever story was going, whatever beautiful idea or philosophy was going on. Just drop it. The questions, the comments, everything. Just cheers. Since we're all on Facebook here, I can use Facebook as a nice metaphor. Any post that you see, especially in like a group, right, has a question or it has some comment, and then under that post, there are lots of answers and secondary comments and third comments and comments within the comments and all kinds like a web of different thoughts. Every single post represents our minds, right? You have one thought or an original thought, or as Facebook, the OP, the original poster. You have this so-called original thought anyway. And then from there, that original thought sparks all kinds of other comments within our mind, all kinds of other ideas, good, bad, and ugly, funny, some just crying for attention, some, wanting to feel intellectually noticed. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And none of it's good or bad, but it's really interesting to look and to see it from that side. It's almost like if there ever was a map of what the mind actually looked like, in a lot of ways it would be social media. Because every comment is a possible thought. It's a thought coming from a being somewhere, in the world. Being that more than likely is not enlightened because the number of people or humans on the planet right now that are like fully awake or fairly deeply awake is quite rare, even within enlightened communities. a lot of people in Enlightenment communities are moving towards that deep level, but not quite there yet. So it just, it shows that most of what you're seeing on Facebook is mind, is mind stuff. It's just mind stuff. Mind, 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 mind. Thoughts, thoughts, thoughts. Comments, comments, comments. And it really shows exactly how the mind is, like how persistent, how constant it is with needing to say something. Even if you agree, like I've had to catch myself all the time. I agree with something, but if I agree, why do I need to say I agree? Why do I even need to push the like button? Why do I need to tell the world that I understand? What is this? If you understand, enjoy, understand. Where is this need to say that we understand? And yet, I love pressing the like button. I love pressing the love button because I like making sure people feel heard. But it's all just really interesting to sit back and observe within ourselves. Why do we do anything that we do? Every word we choose to say, any action we take, even the subtlest of actions, we can really step back and examine. And yeah, when on Facebook, it is just really interesting because it's almost like we now have a visual of what the mind looks like. Before it was like we could talk about it, but now like you can really see what it is. And one thing that's interesting to note as well, and this is where I think a lot of people are turned off by Facebook, is how many people's posts or thoughts, metaphorically speaking, are all about them, me, and my story. That can be a humbling thing to realize, yet at the same time, don't make yourself wrong, but notice, this is important, to notice how much of our mind is focused on us, on me, on the me, right? That's the central part of you. When you start to also realize just how much the mind, in and of itself, the thinking, the thoughts, are all about the self, are all about some central location of me and my story. Uh, it's very egocentric, without any of it being wrong. Remember, no wrongness here. Man, our conditionings, our minds can really start to go like feel a cringe or something uh, by calling out, "Oh, there's a big piece of ego in me." No, don't make it wrong. That's just more ego. But maybe notice how much of your thinking is revolved around you and your story, and why is that? Right? It's just the nature of mind. The, and the egocentric perspective is this fundamental belief somewhere deep inside of us that everything occurring, like the world revolves around us. Yeah? And I mean, everyone here this isn't super strong, I'm sure. It's not that solidified. But for people in everyday world, right? The large collective, that's part of the reason like Facebook has so much ego in it because everybody's only posting selfies and with it just the me thing. It's just all about me and what I me and me and me and me and me. And that was a big realization for me that really deepened my awakening was realizing how much of my own conditioning and my own thoughts were always trying to get me back to thinking about myself. And when you drop that self, when you drop that need to constantly think about yourself and to think about how you look towards somebody else and how they're going to perceive you and on and on and on. When you just drop that whole game, there's so much freedom in there, so much freedom. And what you're also doing there is you're releasing the separate self. You're releasing the little me. And when you release the little me, you see the big me, which you realize, oh, everything actually is centered around me. Everything is all about me, but this me is the big me. This me that everything is revolved around is everyone. That's the conscious me. That's the the I am actually. The self that is healthy, that is love, that is powerful, that is awakening and enlightenment, is the collective me in a sense. But the individual me is a huge obstacle in enlightenment and in spirituality. You could also, notice how many like questions we have, right? It's always focused on me, like, okay, where am like, what can I do? And again, don't make yourself wrong. Just notice this. Pay close attention to this week. This is a big one. How much of our thought is focused on me? The me, not Ryan, but you. Notice. Even let's notice right now. Let's just sit for a moment and notice. Just contemplate. And again, actions speak louder than words. So then you can also go into the humble perspective of how much of your action is for you versus others. No wrongness, just observation. Interestingly, on the flip side of this, there also is self care, and that's equally valuable and important. So, you know, a lot of spirituality has paradox. So, on one level, we want to let go of the self, let go of all this thoughts that are all about me, and as if I'm the everything, the little self anyway. And yet at the same time, there's self care, which is also equally important. Taking care of yourself, learning to love yourself, to forgive, to be responsible, to to treat yourself, to reward yourself. But there's a fine line between doing that and falling into just like self worship. Yeah, actually, in fact, that would be another way of defining ego. Self worship, worshiping ourselves. It's another interesting thing to sit with. Do I do that? Where would I might do that? And remember, words are not as powerful as real as actions. So, what are your actions really saying about what fundamentally you're doing versus, oh, yeah, I know we're one, words. Oh, yeah, I know it's not about me, words. What are the actions reflecting in everyday life? Powerful, and it can be a humbling, a humbling pointer there. But these humbling ones are really some of the most fruitful. So powerful. Is it says in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. The meek I interpret as like the humble, the ones who are really willing to genuinely consider, oh, even though you feel you've gotten quite advanced in your practice, and anyone here I'm sure is quite advanced, yet, no matter how advanced you become, there's always this humility inside that can say, did I fall into a different trap? Hmm. For the sake of progress, for the sake of evolution, for the sake of awakening even deeper and even deeper, have I been in this big illusion this whole time? And honestly, just sitting with it. No judgment, no judgment, just observation. Very powerful one, though. One that I've actually never really, I don't know how much I've actually spoke on this verbally before. She's now coming out. But it was a really important part of early on in my awakening was the realization of how much I was lost in my just thinking about me, thinking about myself, what I wanted, what I thought was best. my plans, my will, my ideas, my desires, all of that jazz. And yeah, we can explore this right now in retrospect, but even more importantly is just be present in this moment and to observe, kind of keep an eye out for this pattern as you continue throughout your day, the today and the week and month and year and the rest of your life. Something to always keep in the back of your mind, so to speak. Is yeah, where's this sense of me? Where is this sense of and why? Why am I doing these things? Where is this really fundamentally connected to? Children actually are a really good example of the innocence of the me complex, right? I mean, they're children, so you can't be mad at a child for being self-absorbed. Um, it's a phase in in getting older. However, with some phases, as we learn, uh, we're meant to move on to another phase. Yet some phases really can be tricky or sticky, and we actually could get stuck in that phase and not grow out of it. Um, which is true on many levels, which is why, you're seeing adults acting like children in the world, even especially in places of power, which is ironic. You would think positions of power would only be held by adults acting like adults, but apparently not. That's fine. But we focus on ourselves, on our practice, and really just deepening. The thing about it too, when you're observing other people and you see someone, like let's say you see somebody who's really self-absorbed, all about them. It's all about the me, right? That might upset you. That might trigger you in some way. Now, if it does, use it because that whatever is getting upset in you, that little bit of judgment in you of recognizing somebody else as being so self-absorbed is triggering some self-absorption of your own. That's the humility. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but very, very powerful and very effective for expediting your awakening. Anytime you feel triggered, you go into it with that reverse engineering sort of perspective of, hold on, if if their being self-absorbed is upsetting me, then that means there's still some self-worship in me happening. Otherwise, it wouldn't bother me. I would just look through it. I would forgive it without any judgment. So this is something I want to point out as much as I possibly can for the rest of my life too, is always, 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 anytime you point the finger at anyone for anything, including me, if you point the finger at Ryan and say, oh, whatever, okay, I don't care, that's fine, that's cool. But notice the mind doing that. Notice the mind pointing the finger at X, Y, or Z, at this person, at this side of the political game, or at that side of the political game, or at the side that's not playing the political game, or anywhere else in between. Notice that finger that's pointing. And then always, always, always point it back at yourself equally, unbiasedly, without without all the excuses of like, oh yeah, but I do this, that, and the other. Let go of that stuff and really just genuinely look like whatever is upsetting you in that other person, there must be a remnant of it in you, otherwise it really wouldn't upset you. Very humbling and very powerful practice to do, um, and constant practice, even on social media. Somebody posts something that upsets you, okay? You catch, you catch, you catch the finger that's pointing, saying no, and then you go, oh, wait a minute. What in me? What in me is saying no, making them wrong? Another powerful part of this too is when I realized My purpose in life is not to evolve everyone else. It's not to tell everyone that they're wrong and to correct them and to teach them. My purpose in life is to just immensely awaken myself. So that's my main priority. Constantly, constantly, constantly deepening, awakening myself. And it's a feeling of like I'm going up regardless of anyone else that chooses to follow. Now, at the same time, I also feel a beautiful compassion of wanting to help anyone else, right? Walking each other home, of course. But there's no expectation, there's no demand. There's no, oh, I need to tell this person that they're crazy. There's no, oh, I need to tell them that they're X, Y, or Z. I need to call them out for being wrong. It's more like I'm so focused on my own path that that's really all that matters. Well, see, and then this is the my thing, my path, yet it is coming from a different place. Because when you fully go into taking responsibility for your path and your path only. Now, sometimes a lot of people get stuck because they feel like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't really necessarily want to help every stranger I run into, but I want to help my family. I want to help my children. I want to help my parents or the ones closest to us. And that is beautiful. Nothing wrong with that. However, they are on their path. It isn't your responsibility to awaken them. It is your responsibility to awaken you. That's it. That's all you can take responsibility for. It would be unfair to take their responsibility away from them, to take their journey away from them. So we focus on we, me focus on me. Constantly, constantly, constantly. Anytime I become reactive, lesson for me. Anytime I feel resistance, anger, upset, need to defend, Hmm, lesson for me. Not for them, for me. And the beauty of this, though, is the more you take this perspective and really just pull in all the responsibility for your own inner state, the more you become a really powerful light for the world around you. You've created the real change that this world needs. The world doesn't need arguments. It needs real change. The real change happens, as Gandhi says, as we've all heard a billion times by now, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's not just a cliche statement, it's actually a huge secret to life. When you see somebody that's not doing, when you're pointing, all you need to really do is make sure you are not doing the thing you're pointing at. If you are the change that you're some part of you is really crying out to see, if you're being that change, then mission complete. Now drop the story. If you try to change them, mission is not complete. You've still fallen into story, and there's your new lesson. Because you're not accepting them as they are. You're not giving them unconditional love. You're giving them conditional love. So really pay attention to this. Point at your pointer more than what the pointer is pointing at when I'm talking about seeing other people as being wrong or unconscious or crazy or insane or racist and on and on and on. They are where they are, but we are where we are. And because we are where we are, we're actually able to really lift people up, the people that want to be lifted up and that are ready to be. That's the other thing. You try to teach somebody that doesn't want to be taught, you're just wasting your time and energy. And you're upsetting yourself. You're losing your practice. You're diluting your own energy. and you're just kind of burning it, just like throwing it into the sun. And uh, usually when some part of us wants to judge or point, it actually some part of us wants to help change something. So if fundamentally our deepest intention for pointing at someone else for being crazy or wrong or correcting them is to teach, then let's make teaching the main priority. So if teaching is the main priority, then it's learning is the main priority. And if learning is the main priority, then what is actually received is more important than what could be the strongest thing to say. And when that shifts, your words shift, your energy shifts, how you interact with somebody very much shifts. And when you do speak to somebody, they don't feel like they're being called out as wrong. They still feel love. Yet at the same time, because they don't feel like they're being attacked, there's more of an open-mindedness to hearing what you have to say. And you plant a seed of possibility of an idea, and then it grows in time. And now we return finally again to silent mind. Okay, that was a nice idea, Ryan. All right, now back to quiet. Okay. I've noticed in YouTube videos or anywhere, but is that with editing, I've noticed a lot of creators, content creators, cut out the silence in between their words. They cut out the space. And I don't think this is probably the best idea because to me, the silence, the space is the most important part. It's like taking out the peanut butter and jelly and just having bread left. But most of our world doesn't understand silence in that way, doesn't recognize the beauty and the power of silence. It sees silence as wasted airspace, which is why the world is crazy. Because it's saying the most important thing is the least important thing. When we can flip that around, the world will make a lot more sense. And I will never delete the silence in between my sentences. I refuse. Call me old school grandpa or whatever. But I'm not going to do it. In fact, I've thought about at some point I might just do a silent talk. I'll just sit here for an hour in silence. I'm giving you a fair warning right now. Whenever you look at somebody with a silent mind, love just transfers automatically. When I was an Uber driver, every person that got into that car, thousands of people at this point, or yeah, thousands of people over the 2 years, every one of them I acknowledged with silent mind and transferred love. And this, if you want to talk about how to get past racism and prejudices of any kind, that's the key. When you have silent mind, there is no prejudice. It's just love. And people feel it. Everybody felt it to different degrees. I had very loving, genuine conversations with anyone and everyone that was open and genuine themselves. Those that were cut off were probably just, in their cell phones or or whatever. But that's okay. But um, I know that's a big topic right now in our current world, is racism, which has been for many, many, many years, many different levels. But I know it's good that it's being called out again. But if we really want to bring the change, I honestly believe we really have to understand the source of where any form of prejudice comes from. Not even just racism. We got to tackle the whole beast. The whole beast is separation to begin with, judgment, the idea that one type of the species is more superior or inferior to another, whether that's race, whether that's gender or age, uh, nationalities. I mean, I hear like different countries have like these ancient rivalries. That's ego. No, being this versus that, ego. You're human. Your species is human. End of story. So if another thing, a lot of people are sharing all kinds of like Juneteenth, which is the, the month and day that slavery ended in America, which very important, definitely. I wonder though, what if there's a day that we will memorialize for the end of the slavery of the mind that everybody is still in, or just about everybody is still in, slave to their own minds. That would be interesting. But yeah, if we really want to get to the source of healing all of this stuff, we really got to look deep at ourselves, of our own prejudices, not even just racism, but the whole thing. Economic prejudice, right? The idea that somebody who's poor is less than somebody who's super, super rich, or vice versa. Maybe we think the super, super rich are the evil ones, and the poor ones are just trying to get by, and they're the cool ones. Well, that's still inequality. Flipped around, it's reversed, but it's still this game of separation, making enemies, saying, "Oh, the one percenters are crazy and evil." That's making enemy. It's not love. It's not forgiveness. It's not compassion, and that's mind. Because when you're really in a true no mind, you don't see those one percenters as evil. You just see them as beings with a large number in their bank accounts, and vice versa. When you see somebody who's homeless, you don't see them as being less than. You see them as beings with no number in their bank account. It's the same being, just different numbers in the bank account, different priorities. So if you really want to move past any form of prejudice, the practice of no mind is really the most powerful way to do it, the most genuine way to do it. Otherwise, you're still going to keep separating one or the other, even being prejudiced towards racists and non-racists. It's really the same. It's the same game. It's the same uh, unhealthy mind pattern that creates racism in the first place. This constant game of us versus them. When you dissolve that, and you can just love everyone as they are, that's when the real change happens. That's when it happens. Because everybody wants love. Those who are really strongly conditioned into racism, yeah, they're obviously operating in insanities, but so is everybody else in other ways. And everybody needs love. There's not a single person on this planet that does not need forgiveness and love and just genuine, like, hey, I see you as you are. I love you regardless. That's what we all need. And we can give it genuinely when we quiet the voice in our head. So, very, very powerful practice, truly. And for ourselves, yeah? When talking about forgiving ourselves, loving ourselves, same thing. You quiet that mind that's not loving, and boom, you are loving yourself. You are forgiving yourself. It really is the master keys. Really learning to quiet that mind. Yeah? But that's just the practice, the practice, and the practice. So, thank you for being here in this moment with me. Next, we go to the question and answer. I have a few questions, but I kind of feel like doing an improv one. So if you want to share a question in the next video, share away. And